Hello, everyone, and welcome to Game Week 8 Injury News with me, Jason McKenna, and we are joined by Mr. Ben Dinnery. We're going to be talking through all the Premier League team news, as always, fixture by fixture. But before we get into that, Ben, how are you doing today?
J-Mac, good to be back in the hot seat. Premier League domestic campaign is back underway, so it's always good after a little break through the internationals. It has been pretty manic today, to say the least. 17 press conferences, so information has been flooding throughout the day. A few little tweaks to be added to the table, which we'll do post live stream. But generally, good. Looking forward to a busy weekend and looking forward to the two and getting another 3 points on the board.
Ooh, and so we'll get into that in just a second. But before we get into that, just to remind everybody that you can join our YouTube, but you can also join the Instagram live as well. But yeah, Ben, so just talking us through it all, what is the kind of, I guess, latest big news coming out of the international break? Is there any shocking news that people need to be aware of?
Well, I'll always start by, after every international break, having the caveat that the difficulty we have, depending on the times of press conferences and depending on where players are flying in from and returning, we don't, and managers quite often don't have a lot of information to hand with regards to that. So some of the information is sketchy, and even those that have returned to their respective clubs still haven't been fully assessed and evaluated, and therefore decisions on playing status could be left until the very last moment. And even if they did manage to get on the training pitches on Friday for a late session, they'll want to make sure that those players don't suffer any kind of reaction overnight to clear them for the game. So it's difficult, particularly around, when there's big World Cup qualification games, for example, where players are maybe expected to play a few more minutes than they normally would, or vice versa. If there's only been a couple of friendlies in place, players like Ryan Gravenberch, there were concerns with him, but Ronald Koeman was only managing his minutes, and he got 45 minutes. And again, that was with one eye on the domestic commitments that Liverpool have during this next block. But before we get into everything, what I'll do is I will join you,
Yes,
Jason, on Instagram. So if you
have
give
I sent
me
you an
a
invite?
second.
I think I've sent you an invite over there.
Have you? Oh, it says Ben Dinnery joined. It says I'm joined. Am I joined?
It says you're joined.
Request to join. There we go.
Okay, let me see if I can
request.
So just for everybody, we are live on Instagram as well as on YouTube. So you should be joining any second now, Mr. Dinnery, and then we'll go straight into the analysis. There you go, split screen action right there.
Double bubble.
Double bubble indeed. So let's
take this Bramble and Kieran Dyer.
Back in the day. My goodness me. A lot of Geordie references right there. So let's get into it. Game week 8 of the Premier League. The first one, Nottingham Forest versus Chelsea. What is the kind of overarching narratives there? Because, we know that Ange Postecoglou is doing a terrible job there at Nottingham Forest, but is that down to injuries at all?
There's certainly one or two injuries that you can't hide from the fact. Olaina was he had surgery during the early days of Postecoglou's tenure. We've also seen the absence of Murillo off and on. He did return for a few minutes. I think it was last time out of the game before that was struggling. So he's going to be a late call. Questions with regards to team news. A lot of those were covered or sort of looked at the fact that Postecoglou apparently, if media reports are to be believed, is at the last chance saloon, having suffered 7 straight losses. Is it not 7? Is it 7 straight losses? Or he certainly hasn't won in any of those 7 games since taking over. So this is a pivotal and a big game for him, and one player that ideally he would love to see in the ranks is Chris Wood. Now, unfortunately, he's picked up a little bit of a knee problem. It is a niggle. His minutes were managed for New Zealand, so there is a chance he could be in the squad. But what we would say is he's probably not 100%.
And we just have a message here from GV. He says, "Good evening, Ben and Jason. Always nice to see you, GV."
Amen. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So going on to Chelsea then, and they have some huge injury problems at the moment, Ben. I think one of the big ones that people will be interested about is obviously the continued absence of Cole Palmer. Seems to be a bit more serious than initially thought because he's about to be out for around 6 to 7 weeks. Is that right, Ben?
Yeah, potentially. And I mean, and that really there's no definitive timeline. Enzo Maresca is hopeful that Cole Palmer is able to return within that 6 weeks, but there are no guarantees as with any long-term injury. So he's still being treated conservatively. He dealt with any suggestion that Cole Palmer may need surgery with a straight bat. So that's certainly, in terms of official updates, that's not on the table. But yes, it looks as if he's going to be out, certainly for this block of games, and probably, as we head into that sort of festive period, that December period, which is a huge blow for Chelsea because, when he went off, it didn't look as if it was a huge issue. And, Maresca commented and sort of suggested again that we were hoping around 2 to 3 weeks, but this is dragging on a little bit now. And as you say, Chelsea have a fairly extensive treatment room at the minute, although the caveat is we do have a few players expected to return this weekend. We've seen the absence of Reece James for England, for example. That was more of an impact injury. That was a laceration of the shin. We also have Wesley Fofana. That was a concussion, so another impact injury. He's come through those protocols fine. Tyson recovered from a calf problem. We also have, there's a couple of doubts with regards to the guys who played out in South America. Now, they didn't train yesterday. Moses Caicedo, Pedro Neto, and also Enzo Fernandez. He's been a big player in the absence of Cole Palmer. Now, there's a little bit of a bit of inflammation, a little bit of swelling around the knee, and that's being managed. So again, a decision on whether any of those players will be available will be taken either later tonight or early tomorrow, providing that they've been able to come through that final session.
So just people tuning in on Instagram, we're going to be talking now through the data, which is obviously free on the numbersgame.uk website. But for everybody on YouTube, you can see it on screen here. And like I said, it's a free membership. You just sign up and then you have all the Premier League's data here. But looking at the game then, there's a huge away advantage, seemingly, according to the algorithm, a 49% chance of a Chelsea win. However, we've seen that Chelsea have had spotted form this season. Or is it that Nottingham Forest are just that bad, Ben? Who are you kind of backing in this game?
All of the, I suppose, just the eye test, and you would plumb for Chelsea hands down. I think they're always difficult fixtures to predict after the international break, in particular those early kickoff games, because again, when you have players traveling from all corners of the earth, and I seen one player had a 20-hour flight time and transitioning from international football back into domestic, then managers don't have a lot of time to work with these players. So potentially, that could work in the favour of Ange. I thought his press conference on Friday was box office again, and you know what, I'm leaning towards Forest causing a little bit of an upset or a surprise, and I think they'll take something from this game. I don't think they'll get the 3 points, but I could quite easily see a share of the spoils. And that's based on a number of factors, but mainly coming down to the issue that they've had such a disrupted build up to this game that, like I say, I think it might just favour Forest. Who's had a little bit more time, granted, not with a full squad, but a little bit more time to work with these players, and hopefully, implement some of those philosophies which, carried them on to European success, let's say, at Tottenham.
Yes. So maybe for those who aren't as bold as yourself, would you say maybe the best kind of selection is both teams to score? Do you think that neither team is keeping a clean sheet there?
Yeah, I'd certainly be happy with that. I don't see either team keeping a clean sheet with this one. So, if I was to go down that route, I'd probably maybe under 2.5 goals, so maybe a 1-1.
Oh, wow.
But But the safe bet for me would be both teams to score.
Excellent. So let's move on to your boys. You seem to be absolutely buzzing for this one against Brighton. So, what is the latest team news before we get into the discussions of the game and maybe why you're so excited for it?
Yeah, well, I'll stick with the Newcastle team news first. And we heard prior to the international break that Johan Wissa hadn't suffered a setback. His recovery was just taking a little bit longer than initially thought. That was an injury from the previous international break. So it's probably going to be the beginning of November when we see Wissa in a black and white top. On the more positive news, with Jacob Ramsey, he did train ahead of game week 7. That was an ankle problem that kept him out for the previous 4 weeks. He's in contention. There were 1 or 2 concerns with regards to Joe Linton. That was an injury that was picked up playing for Brazil. Thankfully, not too serious. But again, Joe Linton's one of those players that the club weren't able to fully assess before Eddie Howe's early Friday morning press conference. So, he will hopefully he will come through Friday's session without any issues, and he will be included. There's certainly nothing major there that we expect to see. But elsewhere within the team, it's pretty much as you were. A couple of the longer term injuries, Livermento's progressing, Lewis Hall's progressing. And there was a slight issue with Lewis Miley, and I know he's not a guaranteed starter in that team, but he was withdrawn from international duty because of a little bit of tightness in his calf.
And so let's switch the attention to Brighton before we get on to the game data, which again, just to remind people, is free on the numbersgame.uk website.
Yeah, Fabian Hertz hasn't been too impressed with the international break. In fact, he referenced that we're not getting our players back in the same sort of status and fitness as we sent them away. So, and reading between the lines, it looks as if 1 or 2 players who have come back, certainly with a few niggers, may not make the game. Brejan Gruja was a player who was withdrawn from the under-21 squad. That was a knee problem. He actually picked it up playing for Brighton. I think it was Wolves last time out. So he's definitely out of the game. Long-term issues, again, there's no real change there. Solly Marsh, there was a mention, we've had so many touted returns for the winger who's, had some horrific luck over the past couple of years. That projected timeline is probably now going into 2026. Adam Webster, again, maybe looking to play against this season. And Jack Hinchelwood, that's a ligament problem in his ankle, so he's still a few weeks away. But Karu Matoma, Joel Veltman, Diego Gomez, they're all players who will have late fitness tests, and they've got a good chance of being involved in the matchday squad.
So it sounds like with Fabian Hertzler, it's almost like when you lend your lawnmower to the neighbor and they bring it back in a worse condition. Is that what he's kind of going through at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good analogy. It's probably like what I would say if we're talking about a fly where you've went over the flex, you haven't quite cut through the wire, so it's not totally dysfunctional and knackered, but if you push it too hard and you go over it again, it's gone. So it's whether he's got enough gaffer tape in his little magic box of his to fix that wire up.
Well, he's a young manager, so he's probably got an innovative. Let me get that right. Third time lucky way of doing it. Just going back to Johan Wissa though, before we get into the actual match here, it's kind of a tragic start to him at Newcastle here that he's had this terrible injury. How do you think it's going to impact how he starts his career at the club? Because he's going to have his minutes managed because he's been out for such a long time. But he's also going to go in at probably the deep end, when it's all the matches in December. Do you have like a little bit of worry that there'll be an injury recurrence because it's during that stressful period? Or do you have faith in the Newcastle injury team, which has, proven itself to be very good at managing loads of players?
Yeah, absolutely. But football is a results-based business, and when things are going well, then the team has easy decisions to make. We look at Voltemera, Osula's carrying a little bit of an ankle issue. Anthony Gordon's playing great. If you're winning games and you're moving up the table, you're doing well in the Champions League, then the pressures, eases slightly to maybe rush or throw Johan Wissa back in there. If you pick up a suspension or another couple of injuries here and there, or you suffer a defeat, then maybe you look into the likes of Wissa to come in and just pick the team up and bring it up. But look, there's a lot more, decisions are taken with a lot more of a long-term view of players. So we're not just talking about the here and now and getting them through, say, a December and a Christmas. It's bringing Wissa back and making sure that he can, flourish during the second half of the season. So I've got no concerns that he will be managed, in that respect. Yeah, like I say, you just hope that Newcastle are in a position where, we're doing so well on the pitch anyway, that the pressures to make those tough calls are almost taken away from the likes of Eddie Howe, because, the players who are in that starting 11 are performing and delivering for the team.
So turning our attention to Saturday, then 3:00 kick-off, and it is an away game for Newcastle, but they're still favoured in this one, but only slightly, with a 38% chance on the algorithm. And just to remind people here, this data is free over on the numbersgame.uk website. So do you think that the stats here are a little bit harsh on Newcastle because they're travelling down to the Amex, or are Brighton that good at home and they will cause Newcastle a few problems?
I think Brighton are capable of causing any team problems. They're a really classy outfit, well-run club. I do like Hurtler. They've got some great players amongst their ranks. Belieber being one of them, but he hasn't really hit the ground running this season. So I think I was just talking about this morning. Rarely do you get a 7 out of 10 from Brighton. It's either a 9 or a 5. And when they're hitting 9s, I think they can, they're capable of getting a result against anybody in that league. But as we've seen, in some performances, they are capable of that odd 5. And I'm hoping it's going to be that 5 this weekend, and Newcastle can capitalize. But it's not a ground, and it's not a team we tend to do really well against. And again, I think it's a tough one. I am leaning more towards the draw, but also I think it's going to be a good, entertaining game. I think there will be goals, so both teams to score. Yakuba Minta being somebody that I would pick out for Brighton, obviously the former Newcastle player who, unfortunately, because of PSR rules, we had to let go. Ideally, Eddie Howe would have loved to have kept him, but he played well on his return to St James's Park. I think it was last season. Grabbed himself a goal. He's a handful. He's quick, and he could cause us some problems. For us, I think we'd be looking at the likes of Anthony Gordon to, continue his rich vein of form and, goal scoring exploits, and of course, Voltemeda got goals for Germany during the international break, and he's been fantastic since he joined Newcastle. So those are the two players that sort of spring to mind for the Black and Whites.
Yeah, does it worry that Brighton haven't actually had a win? That Newcastle haven't had a win against Brighton in a competitive match since 2023, all the way back then. I think that's March time, April time. No, that's May 5th. Is that a little bit of a worry there that, and that was at St James's Park as well. So the last kind of time was 2 years ago. Ever since then, 3-1 Brighton, 1-1, 1-0 to Brighton, 1-1, and then 1-1 Brighton again.
Yeah, no, it's not if that run was, extending beyond maybe, 10, 12, 14 games, then fair enough. But like I say, that, the Brighton are a good team. Let's make no bones about it. I do think that, again, the international break may favour Newcastle a little bit more. I'm thinking maybe the likes of Bruno Guimaraes, Joe Linton are probably among those who've travelled the furthest, whereas there's certainly a handful of players in that Brighton team who've done, a little bit more. Diego Gomez is a player who's been on fire He got the 4 goals in the Carabao Cup, I think, if my memory serves me right. He picked up a little bit of a problem for Paraguay. Should be fit, but again, is he going to be 100%? Probably not.
So continuing over then, what are your kind of guesses for this match? Because I think the main story of Newcastle this season, as it has been in previous season as well, the defence is just so hard to break down. 38% of the games they're getting clean sheets in, whereas Brighton only 9%. They've not been steely at the back. If they ever have been really. So is that going to dictate the match, and it's going to be a boring 0-0? Is it going to be a 1-0 to Newcastle and a scrappy win there, but still the kind of better defence and better attack seeing it out? What's your call for it?
Yeah, I think again, I'm going to go for both teams to score. You look at I think we've probably, it's a defensive unit. You could maybe argue that we are slightly stronger because we lose the offensive threat of a Livramento and maybe a Lewis Hall. So really, you've got, presuming that he's probably going to go with the likes of, well, there's no guarantees with Fabian Schär, but you've got to put in Dan Burn in there. You're going to have Trippier on the opposite flank, and then you've got, I suppose 2 from 3, unless he goes with a 5. So it'll be interesting to see how Eddie Howe lines up. But I think 1-1, and I do expect quite an open and exciting game. It'll be a good game to watch.
Okay, so let's turn our attention to the 2 new promoted teams in the Premier League, and it's Burnley versus Leeds United. There's an interesting prediction here with the algorithm. Again, if people are watching on Instagram, all this data is free on the numbersgame.uk website. But let's talk through the team news coming out of this international break. Is there anything that either side need to be worried of?
Yeah, I mean, the big news for Burnley, really, and you, Scott Parker, will be looking at this game thinking, while it's not must win, it's certainly, must not lose. And ideally, you would like to get that 3 points on the board, because believe it or not, even at this early stage of the season, if results were to go against the bottom 3, then they're almost at risk of being cut adrift ever so slightly. And Jadon Anthony, who's been a big player for the Clarets this season, he was forced off in the last game. Thankfully, it appears to be only an impact injury, potentially sort of a dead leg, so he should be okay. But Lyle Foster as well was another player who was withdrawn from the South African team. He's come back. He's been assessed down at the club, and they're fairly hopeful that he can be available for the match. Elsewhere within the group, you're pretty much just talking about the other long-term injuries. There was some hope that maybe Connor Roberts was on the cusp of a comeback. He was training with the first team, but he has suffered a setback, and it probably means we're not going to see him now until early 2026.
That is a real shame there. And on to Leeds United.
Yeah, Leeds, generally speaking, no fresh injury concerns. We do see the return of the Italian goalkeeper, Perry, but Daniel Farkas said that he's probably going to opt for Carl Darlow to stick between the sticks with him. Daniel James is going to be there or thereabouts. He's had a bit of a patchy sort of injury record this season, a little bit of a disrupted time. There was hope that Willie Gnonto would recover from a calf complaint, which he did. However, it was decided that he would go under the knife during the international break just to have a little bit of a tidy up for the hernia. Now, that's probably going to keep him out for maybe another 7 to 14 days, so he's definitely out. But elsewhere, it's pretty much as you were with that Leeds squad.
So looking at the algorithm, and this is a big opportunity here. It's stating that Leeds are going to lay down a marker and get 3 points travelling to not to Selhurst Park, to Turf Moor. But I don't know how I feel about this one here. Is this, maybe something that we're not looking into with the data? You've really good at kind of explaining context and maybe things that people aren't taking into account. Is there something here that I'm missing that makes Leeds such big favourites here?
I think I have had a look at the data myself, and I was quite surprised at how bad Burnley have been this season. And again, the expectation is that I think, solid at home, win the matches as they did against Sunderland, during those opening game weeks, get the points on the board, and then hopefully snatch 1 or 2 on the road over the course of the season, and that would be enough to keep them up. But when you look at some of the data in terms of they're a side that's no team has faced more shots than Burnley. So Martin Dubravka inevitably is one very busy goalkeeper. They have the highest XG against. Only West Ham have conceded more. They average the lowest possession of any team, around 35% this season. But that being said, Leeds just don't travel very well at all. They have the lowest XG of any team on the road. They have the lowest number of shots. They have the joint fewest number of big chances created away from Elland Road. So to have Leeds as such big favourites, then I think that's maybe given a little bit optimistic on them, but also maybe not giving Burnley in their home form and Scott Parker enough credit. It could come down to the fitness of the likes of Lyle Foster and Jaden Anthony, who are big players for Burnley. But I'm going to stick my neck on the line, and I'm going to say Burnley to win this one. And again, I'm going to go with both teams to score and a Burnley win.
Goodness me. So that means Burnley get 2, and they've only been averaging 1.11 goals.
I think they may get 3. 3-1.
3-1 is the
3-1
correct scoreline here, right here, everybody, so that you can get on that one. Let's move our attention then to Crystal Palace versus Bournemouth. And I think this one is really, really hard to call. But is there any injury news that that might affect any of the teams involved with this?
For Palace, not really. Long-term injuries, pretty much the same. But everybody else within that Eagles squad has come back, and those early evaluations and assessments suggest that there are no real concerns. And of course, they'd be looking to bounce back after that first defeat in 17-18 last time out. But of course, I think they're on 9 unbeaten at home. For Bournemouth, the big blow for them was losing, or the loss of David Brooks. He picked up a hamstring problem playing for Wales against Belgium in that World Cup qualifier. We don't know the extent of that. Doesn't look to be too serious. Suffice to say, we're probably still looking at a couple of weeks. One potential player returning to the ranks could be Adam Smith, although he wouldn't be in line for a start. It's somebody that may be introduced from the bench.
Okay, and so looking at it then, 42% chance of Crystal Palace are going to win at home. Do you think that is right there? Or is Bournemouth, who have been incredible, both defensively and offensively this season, is it more likely that it could end up a draw?
Again, I'm expecting a good match here. And look, I think a win for either team wouldn't come as any big surprise. I think Anton Semenyo, everybody's been talking about his performances this season. I think he's had 3 man of the matches out of their 7 games so far. So he's been the outstanding pick. For Palace, there have been a little bit. I think there's a lot more to come from Palace. Certainly, if you look at the data, they're not quite hitting the heights. They're underperforming. If you look at maybe Jean-Philippe Mateta's form this season, I don't think any player has missed as many big chances as him this year. So if you can get him to click and convert some of those big opportunities, then I can see, like I say, I can see Palace coming away with 3 points. They'll be smarting off that loss to Everton, particularly in the manner in which it came, having been 1-0 up. So therefore, I am going for the Crystal Palace win 2-0.
So they're winning 2-0 as in 2 goals, or they're winning 2-0 as in there'll be no goals scored, but it could be 5-0 or something.
Palace to score twice and Bournemouth to score none.
Okay.
Two.
Absolutely
Two.
wonderful there. Turning our attention then to the big game for Everton there. As you mentioned there, they were the team to topple Crystal Palace in that fantastic run, but they have a very difficult trip to the Etihad. But a lot of people are saying that they might cause an upset there. Is there any injury reasons for that though, Ben? Are some of Man City's big key players, anybody injured that we should be aware of?
Yeah, Rodri is out of the game, so that'll be a big talking point. And I know City have moved on from the fact, that they no Rodri, no win. They've recruited well and they've got other players coming into that position. So he's maybe not, that loss doesn't influence the City lineup as much as it previously did. For me, I can't see anything other than a home win. Mateo Kovacic, he had surgery on his Achilles during the summer, and he had minutes for Croatia for the first time since that operation during the international break. So that's big news. There's also potentially the return of Ryan Aït-Nouri from an ankle problem, and also Omar Mamouche. Both of those players have been back on the training pitches and working with the squad.
And so Everton, apart from Grealish, who is not available for this game, what is the latest with their team news?
Yeah, in terms of those key sort of first team players, Dewsbury Hall returns after, as David Moyes quite rightly pointed out, that ridiculous ban for accumulating 5 yellow cards. In particular, 2 of those were just mind blowing. So he comes back in, and potentially that could be a straight swap for him and Jack. Also, Jared Branthwaite is in and around the squad, but I don't see David Moyes changing things up too much following that win over Crystal Palace. Again, Branthwaite has been out for some time. Nathan Patterson picked up an injury playing for the under-21s during the break. But again, it's pretty much as you were with the Toffees.
So moving our attention then to the data in this game, 72% chance of a Man City win at the Etihad in front of their fans. Is that generous though, Ben? Or do you think that they're good for it and that it's actually going to be maybe closer to a cricket scoreline than a football scoreline?
I think City are still a difficult team to work out. They have proven themselves to be a little bit inconsistent on occasions. And, could Everton go there and get a result? Yes. Ultimately, it's going to involve somebody trying to stop Erling Haaland, who carried on his great, domestic form for Norway during the break. So he's riding high on confidence. But for me, I'm firmly looking at that home win. I don't really see Everton, having the personnel to be able to halt that City train. I don't think it'll be a steamroller, but I think it could be looking at maybe a win to 0, and that's maybe a 2 or possibly 3-0.
Goodness me, that will still be quite embarrassing for Moyes, though. He doesn't like to lose by big score lines at all. Finally, of these 3 o'clock kickoffs, we have Sunderland, a name that you absolutely hate as a fan of Newcastle, but they are taking on Wolves. It is at the Stadium Light, where Sunderland have been fabulous this season. What is the latest team news for both teams, though?
Yeah, there was a couple of slight concerns, Siddiqui being one of those for Sunderland. He's been a key part of their midfield. There was, reports of a slight issue during the international break, but thankfully he looks to have returned. And those initial assessments confirm that there's really nothing too sinister there. Certainly nothing to worry about. So generally, Regis Lebre should have more or less the same bulk of players available at his disposal. Of course, they've got a fairly extensive injury list, but most of those players have been in the treatment room almost all of this season.
And so moving it over to Wolves as well, who still sit bottom of the table, still have so many issues in the squad. But is it anything to do with injuries?
Jorgen Strand Larsen, he is in and around that starting 11 and he is getting minutes, but there's an ongoing Achilles problem with that. And that's just that's twofold in terms of his impact. One, he's not able to train fully, and that's having a knock-on effect on him, being able to perform optimally, match day. By Vitor Pereira's own admission, he's trying to contribute. He's trying his best. He's working hard, but like I say, while he's got this niggling Achilles issue, then he's never going to be able to sort of play to the best of his ability. So that's a big blow. Of one potential, replacement could be Hee-chan in his position, but again, he's picked up an injury on international break. Doesn't look too serious, but he's facing a late fitness test. And Bellegarde, he's a little bit under the weather at the moment. We'll see how he feels tomorrow morning when he wakes up, and that'll determine whether he's in the squad or not.
So uncertainties over the starting 11 for Wolves, as well as Sunderland's absolutely amazing form, puts Sunderland with a 46% chance of a win, whereas Wolves have only a 27% chance. Do you think that's about correct there? Are the Black Cats looking that good?
I think that's fair based on what we've seen so far this season. I've mentioned a couple of times on this podcast that I don't necessarily think Wolves are as bad as maybe the league table would suggest. And, we're coming into a period now where they're now unbeaten in 3 games across all competitions, and a little bit unfortunate. I'm thinking of the game against Tottenham in particular, which was a late equaliser. So I think it'll be tight. Wolves actually done all right up here at St James's Park, so a travel up north is certainly not too off-putting for them. I do fancy Sunderland to win. I think it will be tight. I think it'll be quite nervy, and I'm going to go for a low-scoring 1-0 win to the Black Cats.
Yes, indeed. And just kind of looking at it as well, just to reiterate your point, is on here on screen, and for the people on Instagram, it's all on the numbersgame.uk website. The kind of average XG for and average XG against, there's not much in it between the two teams there. So this kind of thing that you're saying there, that actually Wolves aren't doing too bad in the underlying data, this would kind of back it up, saying that they are basically trying to keep it tight at the back. They haven't been great going forward. But I guess context matters as well, because they didn't have an easy start to the season. They played some really difficult games, like you said there, Newcastle, Tottenham, but add into that obviously Manchester City, who are one of not only the best teams in the Premier League, but one of the best teams in Europe. That is a tough start. So maybe we should not be so harsh on them as well. But we've got Ben's pick for that one, and it's another Sunderland clean sheet, so they'll be adding to that as well. Now, before we get into the Arsenal versus Fulham chat, we did get a message sent in ahead of this one saying, is it Arsenal's season to win the league? I didn't send that message in before you say anything, Ben. That wasn't me trying to control the chat or anything. What do you think, though, Ben? Is it time for the Gunners to lift the Premier League? Is this their best opportunity for many years?
I think they'll bottle it again, Jace. Listen, after the way you came up to St James's Park and stole 3 points, it's a little bit too raw, and it's still a little bit too close for us to be giving any favour to Arsenal at this moment in time. Do they have this squad capable? Yes. They seem to address the areas with regards to sort of the depth within that group, allowing sort of Mikel Arteta to be able to maybe rest and rotate. And like I say, if you do pick up 1 or 2 serious injuries, then you've got some players to come in and fill the void. I think the addition of Eza, who I think is a fantastic player. I even like Gyökeres. I mean, I thought he'd done all right against Newcastle. I know he's facing a lot of flack for his performance and ultimately a lack of goals, which But I do think there's a lot more to his game than just that. But no, I'm not in the Arsenal to win the Premier League camp.
Just yet.
I'm sorry.
Okay. We'll come back in a few weeks and see if you're converted then. Let's turn our attention then to the injury news, starting off with Fulham. They've had striker issues. They've had so many of their forwards out. Is it good news for the Cottagers, though?
Not really. I think if you were to look at where Fulham were prior to the international break and where they are now, you could argue that it's they're in a worse position.
My goodness.
Anthony, Jedi, Anthony Robinson was hoping to get some minutes with the US national team. We know he hasn't really hit the ground running since that post-season knee operation. He's been building his fitness back up. It looks like he suffered a little bit of a setback training with the national team. So done the first couple of sessions and then had to withdraw, so wasn't able to play any minutes at all. He is out of the game. There are also still question marks over Raul Jimenez and that hip injury. Munez is definitely out. Sasa Lukic, he's also out probably for another 7 to maybe 14 days. Question marks over the fitness of Kenny Tete. So look, yeah, things aren't great for a squad that Marco Silva had been looking to recruit and bolster over the summer, but just wasn't able to get the players that he wanted over the line. And there's also Samuel Chukwueze has been sent for a scan today. The AC Milan loanee was forced off for Nigeria. Again, doesn't look as if it's going to be a long-term issue, but given the quick turnaround, given the fact that it is a muscle problem, I suspect that he will not be risked this weekend.
So turn our attention to the Gunners then. And is there any relief from some of the injuries in their back room?
Is it Piero Hicapi? Is that how you pronounce it, Jay?
Your guess is as good as mine.
Are we taking that? Well, he has been seen on the training pitches, so that's good news. He was with the group Thursday and Friday, so again, barring any kind of reaction, he could return to the matchday squad. I did have a lot of questions with regards to the fitness or question marks on the status of Ben White and also Zubimendi. Zubimendi was spotted watching on from the sidelines on Thursday, while Ben White was nowhere to be seen. Both of those players are just being managed given the amount of work they've done in recent times, and both players are available to the squad. Elsewhere, you're looking more long-term. Martin Ødegaard, I think I read a stat that he's the first Premier League player ever to have been substituted in the first half of 3 consecutive games. Now, all of those were obviously injury-related. And now, of course, he's set for another spell on the sidelines. Mikel Arteta was quite coy, wouldn't give any kind of definitive timeline, but my understanding with that type of injury, which was an MCL, the medial collateral ligament injury, no surgery required, but we're looking in the region of around about a 6-week time frame, potentially. I think you may have a North London derby towards the end of November or beginning of December. I think that fixture will be, he'll have one eye on a comeback for in and around that game.
So let's focus our attention on this game then. It's another London derby against a team in white as well. But Arsenal are travelling to Craven Cottage, sitting top of the league with a 55% chance of winning in this game. What is your kind of calls around this one?
Yeah, I'm all in on Arsenal for this one. I just think the injury problems that are facing the Cottagers are too much. And Arsenal do have that wave of momentum at the moment. Their squad are full of confidence. They're playing some good football, and I can see a comfortable win. And again, it wouldn't surprise me if Arsenal came away from that with an easy win to 0, possibly 2, or maybe even 3-0.
That's why I'm backing a win to 0 for Arsenal as well. And that is in our preview video. The tips don't lie on the YouTube channel as well. So let's bring it over to Sunday's fixture, starting off with the 2 o'clock fixture, and Tottenham host Aston Villa. Is this going to be a tough one for Tottenham? Do they have any injury news?
The big news are not so much. Dominic Solanke is progressing nicely from that ankle surgery, had a small procedure, tidy up. He wasn't recovering as hoped, so went under the knife. Kolo Muani, he had a dead leg that went on a little bit longer than expected. And I think we covered this a couple of years back, and people talk about dead legs, and the assumption is they're fine, it's just a knock. But we mentioned the fact that there are instances where players have potentially lost their leg, and this Mawani dead leg went on for the best part of a month. But he has played in a behind closed doors friendly, came through that, so he is expected to be added to the match day squad.
Oh, that was a Tottenham player as well that almost lost his leg too.
Yes, it was Christian Ziga,
yes.
if I recall. I'm not sure if he was a Tottenham player at the time. I've got a feeling it was maybe his spell at Middlesbrough. Okay. That ended up being rushed to hospital, and potentially he could have lost his leg with that one from a fairly innocuous challenge.
So head over to the Premier Injuries channel, because that was a very good video that Ben and I made over there. It's not a numbers game one, but it's still a fascinating one for people who are just interested in football and interested in injuries. If you've got a little bit of I don't know, a liking for a gore, because people seem to like those injury videos, don't they? They do well. But yeah, so it's a dead leg for Kolo Muani, and then anybody else?
Yeah, Yus Bissouma, who has been the information, he was either carrying an injury or he fell out of favour or both. Well, he has picked up an injury this time while on international duty. That was an ankle ligament, so he's going to be out for some time. And also Ben Davies, that was a muscle problem as well for Wales. Again, neither of those players are really be pushing for a first, for a start in that first team under Thomas Frank. So it should be pretty much as you were with regards to the core of that starting 11.
So moving to another one of the Premier League's big teams, Tottenham have been doing well this season, but Aston Villa have started tragically bad. What is the latest with them in terms of their injury news, though?
Yeah, the big talking point is the fitness of Ollie Watkins. Picked up an injury in that first England game, collided with the post. Nothing too serious. I think it was just more of a precautionary measure. He has been training, and again, barring any kind of major reaction or setback, we would fully expect Ollie Watkins to be in the squad. They'll also be boosted by the return of Emi Buendia. I think that was a concussion, and also Jadon Sancho, who could take place on the bench following an illness. Both of those players missed out in game week 7.
So the data of both of these sides has actually been pretty poor as well this season. Looking at other people's output, the Athletic, Tifo through the Athletic reported how bad Tottenham were doing. If people want to check that out over there, but he's enjoying his brew, everybody. In terms of it, then. Both of these sides have not really performed to expectation and have also looked pretty poor in consideration. But Tottenham have somehow found themselves in third, whereas Aston Villa are in 13th. However, going into this game, Tottenham have a huge advantage, it seems, 45% chance of a victory here. But do you think it's going to be a tighter affair at the Tottenham Stadium? Because for me, Aston Villa, they have their issues, but they have managed 40% of clean sheets this season. Defense hasn't been so much the issue. It's more the attack for both of these teams. And I think it could be a bit of a boring game. But what do you think?
Yeah, I'm certainly expecting it to be competitive. I think it's a difficult call. Again, I could maybe sit on the fence with this one and maybe expect a draw. Attacking wise, Aston Villa have been pretty poor. Morgan Rogers could benefit from his performance for England during the break, and if he can take that back into domestic football, then the Villains will certainly offer a much bigger threat. John McGinn as well, heading into the international break, was in great form, and he was really sort of dragging Villa through those games and got his name on the score sheet a few times. It wouldn't surprise me if either side winning this. I can see this one going 2-1 either way.
Okay, so 2-1 is the call for Ben, but either way. So I guess maybe to protect yourself, would you just put both teams to score as your guess for this match?
Well, over 2.5 goals.
Okay, I like that one. And then continuing over, I guess maybe this is the biggest game of the weekend. but it's not the top of the league billing that it used to be. Is Liverpool taking on Manchester United? And Manchester United are not favoured at all in this fixture, with a 22% chance of victory, but it's obviously at Anfield as well. However, what is the latest team news first for the home Reds and then the visiting Red Devils?
Yeah, Ryan Gravenberch is one I've already touched on. That was more of a precautionary tactical withdrawal for Holland. He said there was a little bit of tightness, a little bit of fatigue in the hamstring, but he was just being managed, so that's fine. Elsewhere, Alisson remains on the sidelines, so he will not be between the sticks this weekend. Probably looking at least another couple of weeks with that, but again, that's nothing definitive. A couple of things that Arnason did pick out now. He believes that Alexander Isak is in a position now where he can be judged properly. More minutes under his belt. He's completed more training sessions following his move from Newcastle. So he's hopeful of the fact that, the real Alexander Isak will stand up and start delivering for the Reds.
Yes, and on to the Red Devils then, who have this terrible trip to Anfield.
Yeah, Mazraoui is the big question mark. Ruben Amorim said that he didn't really know where he was in terms of his recovery. Again, that was another muscle injury. He had come off the back of that previous issue, high recurrence rates, high re-injury rates within that first 30 days. And typically, when you suffer a similar injury within that time frame, you're out for a longer period. And Mazraoui had that around sort of 3 to 4 weeks out, I think it was. So the expectation is that he won't be involved. The other, question mark within that United squad was Aidan Heaven, picked up a heavy knock for England under 21s, replaced at half time, didn't play any further minutes for his country, returned to the club, but again, he may be fit enough to take his place on the bench.
So concentrating on this game then, actually, before we get into it, I did want to talk about those comments from Arne Slot on Alexander Isak. I was a little bit surprised. I thought maybe it's a bit premature because, maybe it was overplayed, made into a meme and everything. But we all remember how Alexander Isak performed in that game against Crystal Palace, and that was only a few weeks ago. He looked absolutely knackered. He wasn't chasing the ball back. He wasn't doing any sort of pressing. He looked like his tank was empty. Do you believe that he could have, caught up with his fitness levels that quickly, or is this a manager just trying to give a boost to a player who does have a lot of pressure on him?
Well, certainly in terms of that match sharpness and match fitness, regardless of what you're doing in terms of maybe European football or domestic cup competition or even international football, then it's not quite the same. Where you would look typically at that pre-season block of around about sort of 6 weeks where you'd really sort of look to get into the players and you'd pick your matches and to get them up to speed. Alexander, he shouldn't be too far away. There are obviously questions being asked with regards to he arrives with a hefty price tag along with Wirtz. And Liverpool, of course, have stuttered in recent weeks. So, the pressures are there. But although it pains me to say it, big time players command, hefty transfer fees because they're able to deliver and produce performances in big moments and change games and change momentum and, get things back on track. And I don't think Alexander Isak is too far away from that.
So on this game then, is Isak going to make an impact? Is he going to be able to turn this game, into a great opportunity to boost his confidence? Because Liverpool, 57% chance of victory here. Is it going to be that easy for them?
I don't think derby games are ever that easy.
Yeah.
These are fierce rivals. It's up there certainly with the United and City games, if not more. If you were to ask some people, because they see City as, the upstarts, the new kids on the block, whereas, that Liverpool rivalry is is ingrained with United
Historic.
for a lot of years. I expect Liverpool to win, but again, just given the nature of the rivalry in a quite a hotly fought contest, I think we could be looking at a 1 or a 2-0 to Liverpool.
Paul has put a message to us. Should be United are terrible. So that is his summary of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. United are so far off the pace. It's unreal, but I don't think Liverpool are great either. So I think this is a good opportunity again, just to sort of get their season back on track and get a good sort of confidence, morale boosting win. But I certainly don't expect it to be comfortable. I just think, like I say, these games, could hinge on a red card.
So continuing over to the last game, and that is a Monday night game. So that is an 8 o'clock kickoff. West Ham versus Brentford. What is the latest team news for both those teams?
Yeah, unfortunately, Brentford, one of their young players, one of their summer rivals, picked up an ACL injury during the summer. It picked up, and it's Anthony Malambo. He was in and around that first team squad. That ACL injury now is going to, unfortunately, rule him out for the rest of the season. There was also a slight injury concern over Aaron Hickey. That was the bang an impact injury that he picked up playing for Scotland that caused him to miss the second game, but he has been on the training pitches, so he should be okay. For West Ham, Thomas Souček returns following a 3-match suspension. George Earthy is the only sort of longish term absentee. Elsewhere within the Hammer squad, I'm sure there is one other player there that slips my mind, so I'm going to have a quick look. Of course, it's Nicholas Füllkrug, and that was an injury, a thigh injury that was picked up during the break. He's been sent for a scan to determine the extent of that. It's not a player that we would expect to be involved in the matchday squad come Monday night.
Yeah. He was a baffling signing for me anyway from West Ham. I don't know why they signed. Was he 30, 31? Borussia Dortmund striker, coming towards the twilight of his career, and also the Premier League tax or Bundesliga tax, however you want to refer to it. That was a bit of an odd one. But in this game, Brentford are the slight favourites with a 39% chance of winning, but West Ham aren't far behind with a 35% chance. Is it going to be that close then, Ben? Because we have the new manager bounce, but also I do rate Nuno as a manager. But we also have the reality that actually he's already tweaking the tactics behind closed doors. The Athletic reported that he's experimenting with a 3 at the back, which I think does suit West Ham a little bit better anyway. Are Brentford going to be up for this, though?
Oh, they'll be up for it without a shadow of a doubt. It's a London derby, and I do like Keith Andrews. I think he comes across very well in his interviews. I do like listening to what he has to say. For me, this has a draw written all over it. I don't think it'll be a particularly sexy game. I rarely see Nuno's games as being that. He's very pragmatic in his approach. And I don't necessarily see that Brentford have all the tools to be able to sort of really look to break down West Ham too often. So this, for me, will be tight. I'm looking for under 2.5 goals, and I'm going for 1-1.
Yes, and we've got an agreement there from Paul as well, 0-0 or 1-1 from him. But that is the end of our Premier League roundup. We're here every Friday, so make sure that you subscribe to the channel or hit that like or what is it on Instagram? Follow. You have to do. I'm not down with the kids, Ben. Hit the follow button for Instagram as well, but share as well. It helps us out, but also helps everybody else out. We want people to win. We want people to do well with however they're interacting with the Premier League. But for now, we're going to wish you the best of luck, and we'll see you again very soon.